Greetings and welcome to Hindsight Midwest. Today I'm going to the landing in Shakopee, Minnesota to participate in an organizational meeting of the Stassen Post 190 of the G.A.R. and I will interview Commander Davis. So come and join me.
Officially founded April of 1866 by a fellow named Benjamin Stevenson, and I forget the other fellow's name, two officers that had in late 64, early 65 discussing the end of the war and what they would do and how some of the men would react to civilian life. That was their brainchild for this organization. In reality, what was happening when the war ended, for instance, a lot of these men had been young when they mustered in, some as young as 18 or younger, that those 3.5, 4 years in the Army was their introduction to manhood, to being men. And so their whole life was based on military order and structure, and their whole social life, such as it was based on the other men in their unit. And as so many in today's modern world, as men and now women come home from combat and war, the things that happen there, the bond that those veterans have is immeasurable. And the same thing would happen after the Civil War. These guys, these young men came home, the older men that were with them, that bond was hard to break. They come home after 4 years and now they're told to go as civilians. And so how do you do that? How can you can't talk to your family members, you can't talk to a sister, a wife, a brother about the things that you saw, the things that you did as a soldier, but that bond with your comrades was immediate. So you could very much see these men as they met on the street at home. They started to go off into the woods and camp, have camp outs, and some of the younger guys still had their weapons, were actually marching and drilling, actually still being soldiers. And as they started to hear out here in Minnesota, the word would have got slowly here about this organizations being formed, this Grand Army Republic. And so it was something for them to be part of this larger organization. And that really was the impetus for the start of it, was more for their own well-being. And their remembrances of the men that didn't come home was very strong to these guys, that they watched their comrades die, not just in combat, but terrible diseases that they encountered down south. The loss of those men that they had been with for a couple of years, all of a sudden they're gone, is again something that we civilians can't begin to imagine. So it was very, very important for those guys to not only the camaraderie they had with each other, but to remember their comrades that didn't come home. That was extremely important to these men. That was the beginning of the G.A.R. And then of course it goes on from there for various other aspects, but that was the beginning. The veterans, when they came home, and really throughout their whole life after the war, had very strong community support. The war was, the Union veterans looked at to a large part as the saviors of the Union, of America, putting down a rebellion, and they were highly respected. The community support in terms of financial support was not there. They drew their funds from memberships, which wasn't huge. In the early parts of the organization, dollars were always a problem. As time goes on, eventually there starts to be more financial support from governmental organizations. In some instances, there were special taxes or special levies or other such funds acquired by the government to help the Grand Army, particularly in the 1880s, as it started to put up more memorials, monuments that still exist today in many towns. So there was some limited governmental support, but most of it was done internally with the organization. They started to get a lot of what they called honorary members coming in that were well off, financially well off, that wanted to be part of it, hadn't served. The G.A.R. started to call those men honorary members so they could get some funds for some of these things from those people. So by and large, the funding, the support, financial support they had was internal. Again, it was, if you could give a little bit of discount to G.A.R. member, the financial benefit of these guys doing business was huge. So of course they would they do what they could to be able to claim a relationship to the G.A.R. Again, the G.A.R. By the 1880s starts to become a more powerful force in politics. Although they were a non-political organization, if you were a Republican by that point and you didn't have the G.A.R. support, you probably weren't going to get nominated or elected. So there was a lot of political, and of course from politics is financial benefit from being associated with the G.A.R. A lot of those businesses like that were the ones that would become honorary members. Maybe they didn't actually serve, but by claiming a membership in the G.A.R., they could then advertise in the G.A.R. magazines and such to draw those members in. So yeah, it was financial for a lot of them. That's why they did it. There were at least two women. One for sure was, I think her name was Frank Thomas, that actually went through the war as a man and lived her whole life as a man, received pensions, and was a Grand Army Republic member. But that was a rare case. The women were, because they were not allowed to serve in the actual Army, Navy, or Marines, or the Revenue Cutter Service, could not by definition belong to the Grand Army Republic. In the late 1870s, early 80s, there were two women's organizations vying for the right to be called the official auxiliary of the G.A.R. There were ladies of the Grand Army Republic who, to belong to that organization, you had to have blood relative or spouse that was was a veteran. The Women's Relief Corps was a little different. You didn't have to have a descendant or a relative in the war. You just had to be take oath to the flag of the United States and be willing to help and have that benevolent spirit to help. The Women's Relief Corps will then become the official auxiliary for the G.A.R. in 1883.
What did the Women's Relief Corps do?
They were very involved in helping, just like a lot of the women's auxiliaries of organizations today, helping with picnics and helping. They become very important in the Decoration Day celebrations, especially in the 1880s, as the G.A.R. becomes more involved in the politics of the day with pensions, and they're getting older. The Women's Relief Corps really starts to take over a lot of the Decoration Day celebrations. The Women's Relief Corps is also very instrumental, alongside the ladies of the Grand Army, of establishing old soldiers' homes, places that would help take care of veterans that were having physical issues as they get older from wounds or things that they suffered. They will also, by the 1890s, getting into the schools, there was a lot of concern with the G.A.R. that the schools were not teaching history properly. There was the history of the rebellion was being rewritten more sympathetically towards the South, and so the veterans didn't like that. And they, along with the Women's Relief Corps, started to get into schools, helping to educate what they saw as a true history of the Union. Of course, the Women's Relief Corps then starts to bring flags, giving flags to the school, and bringing in the pledges of allegiance. So that's really where that started in the schools, was with the Women's Relief Corps. And so they're very instrumental in that 1890s and the early 1900s.
How long did the G.A.R. last?
Grand Army Republic, the Republic by its very definition, was a finite organization. You had to have been a Union veteran of the Civil War to belong. There was no other way you could belong. So at some point that organization would cease to exist. The last surviving Grand Army Republic member was Albert Wilson, served at the age of 12 as a drummer in Company C of the 1st Minnesota Heavy Artillery. He never saw combat. The last combat veteran died in 1954, 2 years before Albert. The last G.A.R. encampment occurred in 1949 in Indianapolis, Illinois. There were 6 members there at that time. I think there were 12 or 14 actual members surviving, but only 6 made it to the encampment. At that time, they agreed that they would retain the officers that existed at that point, and that would be the final encampment. And so they eventually started passing away in 1956. Of course, the G.A.R. was officially done. The records then, in theory, at least pass on to the Sons of Union veterans of the Civil War. Some of those records didn't make it there. There was a lot held in the Smithsonian Institute, Library of Congress. The records, were, as a post-close, were supposed to be passed on to the national organization. Some of them found their way into VFW posts or American Legion posts or local museums. Some were just lost to history. The Women's Relief Corps still exists today, along with the Ladies of the Grand Army Republic, the Sons of Union Veterans of the Civil War, Daughters of Union Veterans, and the auxiliary to the Sons of Union Veterans. They're called the 5 Allied Orders, still exist today, doing their benevolent work, a large part preserving battlefields and other memorabilia, and decorating, identifying graves, but they do still exist today. Commander of the post, the post was set up to in roughly the same organization as a regiment, which would have a colonel, lieutenant colonel, major, captains, and lieutenants. In the post, the man that's elected commander wore a badge that resembled the colonel's rank insignia, but the commander was elected. This badge had virtually nothing to do with what rank I may have held during the war. And the same with all the other posts. The commander, of course, would conduct the meetings. The vice commander, vice junior commander, and senior vice commander had their own particular duties throughout the meeting. The adjutant and the quartermasters, they wore the badge of a lieutenant. The senior vice commander wore the insignia of a lieutenant colonel. The junior vice commander of a major. Chaplain or the post surgeon wore a different type of badge. The chaplain had a cross. Officer of the day who conducted men in and out of the meetings wore the badge representing the captain. Then the lieutenants for the adjutant and the quartermaster, and the officer of the guard that would command the sentinels at a post wore the badging of a second lieutenant. But it was set up like any other fraternal organization of the day in terms of what the officers, elected officers, did. And it was based on the Masonic Lodge, their rituals, and of course run by Robert's Rule of Order like any other organization would be run. They would do graveside rituals. It's quite a ritual involved with that. In some instances, for instance, if the deceased soldier was a Catholic, oftentimes the family would request that the G.A.R. did not perform the ritual because it was something that the Catholic religion didn't. It was based on the Masons, so they didn't like that sort of a connotation. So some of the Catholic services wouldn't have had a ritual. But by and large, they tried to do as much for the stream as they could. As the guys get older, of course, it gets harder and harder, and more men die, so it gets very difficult for the G.A.R. to do these things. That's where the Sons of Veterans really start to step up and perform some of these graveside services. It's quite a ritual. Everything they did had a ritual to it. How much some of that was followed in some of the small local posts, that's another question. But what they're supposed to do and they did, it's the same thing.
All right, finally, address anyone out there who might be reenactors.
To all my reenacting friends, many of us have been doing this for a number of years. I have not been doing it as long as some of you guys, only having done it for the past 20, 25 years in the Civil War world. Some of you guys have been doing this for 30, 40 years or more. We're getting long in the tooth, and at the age of 65 or 70, to portray a man that was 25 as a stretch anymore. And plus, I know at the last little event we were at, the moans and groans coming from those tents as we get up in the morning is a terrible chorus of pain. We're not kids, and so I myself I'm having issues being able to do some of these long marches. So the next logical step is what? Give it up altogether? I can't. Can you? The story of your unit, the 1st Minnesota, the 2nd, the 3rd, the 5th, the 4th, all these units that existed, how does that story continue?
Run in, it's open up, it's open.
This story can only continue if you will get involved and be part of this venture. I don't know what this venture will be. This is new. We're just starting this journey, so join with us. The Grand Army Public Corps, as I like to say, the gently aged reenactors.
Well, thank you, Commander. Thank you for joining us on this edition of Hindsight. If you like this program, please hit the like button. If you're not subscribed, please do subscribe. And share this video, not only to help spread the knowledge of my channel, but also the knowledge of the Grand Army of the Republic. We would like lots of other reenactors to join us. Until next time, thank you.